Isn't it time you got to know your technology leaders? You're listening to Off the Record with Health Tech, and I'm your host, Kelly Yoakum. So grab your coffee or cocktail and join us for our casual yet intimate and thought-provoking expose on our top council members, ambassadors, technology innovators, and thought leaders.
Today, I'm very pleased to welcome an exciting guest, Daniele Loffreda, the Senior Advisor for Government and Healthcare with Sienna. Welcome, Daniele.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Kelly. Thanks.
Great. Well, we'd like to dive right in, learning about your career journey. What do you think is your most memorable milestones and most inspiring challenges, and how you really got involved in the industry?
Sure. And kind of first, I knew you had a question about the personal and unique story, and I didn't send anything along, but I would like to get into that. And to make it more personal behind the title. And I think, like a lot of your audience, I'm kind of a kid in a middle-aged person's body. A kid really, from the aspect of always being curious and attracted to new things and new adventures and new kingdoms to conquer. And again, I think like a lot of your listeners, I don't necessarily always want to follow a traditional path. I prefer to blaze my own trails. And I've actually been blazing new trails since I was 2 years old. And, now after decades, I've lived in 8 cities throughout the U.S., 2 in Japan, 1 each in Italy and Finland. And I have a fascination with different languages and cultures. So in addition to English, I speak Italian and Spanish and a smattering of Japanese and Portuguese. But what's really important, much more so than the language, is really communication. How ideas, thoughts, emotions, and concepts are conveyed between people and between organizations. And this is what really kind of led me into the information and communications technology industry, which has really been my home for about the past 25 years. Wow, I really love your passion for education. Fascinating. Absolutely. And you talked about before, or asked about the career journey and the most memorable milestones and challenges and that sort of thing, how I got involved in the industry. And really, I've had many, but the most memorable milestone for me was probably, I was in my mid-30s, and I was really put into a sink or swim situation. I was sent to the UK to negotiate what was going to be a first ever distribution agreement for the company I was working for. And it was really a make or break situation for us. And at the end of really a tough week of torturous negotiations, up and down, back and forth, there remained 2 sticking points that really threatened to derail the whole thing. After that final night of negotiation, it was a Friday, and I left a late-night voice message to my boss back in New Jersey, kind of laying the groundwork for having to come back with my tail between my legs and telling him all the excuses and reasons why this is probably going to fail. And then I went to bed. And the next morning, I kind of woke up and anxiously checked my messages to hear what he had to say. And hopefully it was, good try, come on back home, et cetera, et cetera. But no, it was just a short, concise message which basically said, don't come home without a deal. And not just any deal, our deal. So don't give up the farm just to make the deal. So, I then had to go back to the CEO of the distributor, and this was on the Saturday morning, called him in and basically locked the 2 of us into a room for Saturday and Sunday, and emerged Monday morning with a signed agreement to our original proposal. So, wow. I don't know if it was so much focus and stick-to-itiveness, or was just that the guy wanted to get out of the office and shower or something. But that really did teach me, self-reliance and the ability to really bring focus to bear to resolve a problem.
Wow. Well, good collaboration on that.
Yeah. And then, I first became involved in the health and I say ICT, information communications technology industry, during my days at AT&T and Sprint, just selling voice and data services to hospitals. And then my current employer, Sienna Communications, really began an intense focus on health IT, really probably going back to 2006, but really 2009 and 10 when the industry really started to explode, with a lot more bandwidth demand, the emergence of electronic health records, health information exchanges, telehealth, high-resolution medical imaging. So Sienna really got into that and really tried to develop network solutions to support that bandwidth need, but also kind of noted along the way that as the increase in bandwidth-intense applications came forth, there's also been a greater need for security of the data being transmitted. In the old days, they just used to focus on security of the data source, but really, as we've seen it evolve with all the applications now, you really have to focus on the data itself and where it goes and how it makes its way between the different stakeholders in the health industry. And so Sienna really been developing solutions for data in transit security, whereas a lot of the other parts of the ecosystem are really focusing on data at rest. Sienna really started to work on data in transit. So, along with my professional focus, I also began volunteering at an adult primary clinic here in my city as basically a Spanish translator back in 2010. And as the years evolved, I kind of took on more responsibility and assumed an administrator role. And over the last few years, we've been trying to migrate off of a room stacked from floor to ceiling with paper files, into an electronic health system. And this is on a shoestring budget, being a nonprofit clinic, with a lot of different volunteer health providers that have different backgrounds and different levels of comfort letting the paper records go. So, in addition to being sort of a vendor into the industry, I've also got the administrative experience to kind of emphasize with the audience as they make their way into a fully electronic health record environment.
Well, that's a very interesting career journey and very well-rounded experience. What do you think really drives you, motivates you, and what ignited your passion for security?
Yeah, and throughout my career, I've really been motivated by a desire to be of service and really make a positive contribution to society. You're in an ideal situation where you can support your family and at the same time be involved in something that really helps society evolve. And really, I'm just trying to hopefully make the world just a little bit better from my having passed through it. And again, I'm fortunate in that Sienna, my employer, really encourages employees to get involved in our communities, along with the support it really gives to the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education movement. I'm also kind of grateful that I was guided into the communications industry itself, as really broadband infrastructure is really the underlying enabler of many advances in society, whether we're talking about the smart grid in utilities, smart cities in state and local government, or the real digitization of the healthcare industry. Broadband infrastructure is the common denominator on all these advances and enabling society to really evolve and develop from an economic perspective. I go back to my focus early on was on communication and exchange of ideas and concepts, and then broadband is really the multiplier to get those ideas and thoughts and innovations out to the broader world. Of course, the flip side to all those network advancements is the cyber and overall security impact. As network technology advances, there's also a corresponding number of vulnerability points from a security perspective, and really therein lies the whole yin and the yang of thing. the more that technology helps improve patient care in the health industry, the greater the risk that patient's records could be compromised. And I know that there's a lot of discussion going around in the HIPAA compliance standards and the high tech and really where we should be looking at not just the sources of the data, but the data itself and where the data goes to. And questions about is it time to really relook at HIPAA? And that's just just symptomatic of the industry. And as fast as we develop technology to improve security, the other side, develops ever more innovative tactics to hack in. It's kind of a Rubik's Cube that consumes you and it really keeps you motivated and going.
It's so true. I love that analogy. So from where you are today in your career, what would you say is your most memorable accomplishment, as well as important goals, priorities, challenges, and lessons learned?
Yeah, sure. Again, I go back to the really trying to make sure that along with my advances in my career that I'm trying to give back something. And my most memorable accomplishment was being nominated for the Sprint Communications Humanitarian Award. And this was a recognition when I was at Sprint. It was given about every 4 to 5 years. And it was really involved. It required that your peers, superiors, subordinates, colleagues, that they take you through the nomination process. You can't nominate yourself. And then you have to complete a 20-page document that really lists all kinds of reasons, why they think you should be recognized, giving specific examples, that sort of thing. So out of an employee base at Sprint at that time of about 35,000 people, I was one of 10 to be nominated. I didn't win, but the fact that so many people took the time out of a busy schedule and different management levels, different functions of the organization, they all thought enough of what I was doing to take the time to provide their personal observations and experiences and complete that document, and that was really touching to me. Now, if I kind of look at the goals and priorities and challenges, I can really sum it up into one kind of statement, and that's just to stay current in this healthcare industry, the health IT industry, that's really evolving at light speed. I'm sure that most of the audience can agree with just trying to keep up with all the advances in technology, the advances in regulation, the consolidation of the industry, as the industry shifts to a more consumer-centric and digital model. There's so much more patient data coming from all kinds of different sources, and the increasing use of remote devices and wearables, and that data that needs to be shared with an ever greater number of stakeholders within the health ecosystem. It's just an incredible challenge to keep up with that. And then, it's that I go back to that dichotomy of the advances in technology and the growing acceptance of remote devices and wearables has that corresponding increase in security issues, and that really has to garner more interest and focus at the senior management level, and that's outside of the CIO organization. That's really got to be at the board level. They really need to understand that there's these two opposing forces going on in the industry, which is the consumer-centric model, calling in more digitization, more providing more convenience to the patient, but at the same time, having to guard against all the additional cyber vulnerabilities that those very conveniences provide. So that's the main challenge, and really the lesson as I go back to broadband is really the key enabler of this. And if they choose the right network architecture and the right network level encryption, they can really maybe solve some of those security issues, at least for the time being. As I said, the other side advances just as quickly as we do. And at Sienna, we really have some of the most brilliant minds in the network technology business really focused on developing that next generation of network level encryption.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely agreed. And it would be good to know a little bit about what you think are some of the biggest challenges that you're currently facing, and what's Sienna doing to solve these problems?
And I go back to that whole digitization of the healthcare industry, just the sheer avalanche of data that's being generated, and the question of how to secure that data while sharing it with all the different providers, pharmacists, laboratories, all the insurance companies, all the different stakeholders that have to view that data that's being generated from multiple sources. That's how to secure that and how to ensure that gets transported in the most efficient and cost-efficient manner. That's the biggest challenge and opportunity that we're really focused on. All the different applications that are coming on, the telehealth. I've heard talk of remote robotic surgery, ever higher resolution medical imaging. Those are all driving enormous bandwidth needs. I'll give you an example. And just a single full body MRI, one file can consume up to 40 gigabytes of bandwidth. And when you calculate how many MRI files are generated just from one patient in one session, multiplied by the number of MRIs that a medium-sized hospital system might generate in any one day, that's talking about some incredible amounts of bandwidth requirements. But at the same time, budgets are being held flat or actually decreasing. So from the network perspective, how do we ensure that system has the bandwidth they need it when they need it? Because again, in healthcare, we're talking about life and death situations, without breaking the bank. So that's the real challenge that Sienna's really focused on. And in addition to that, there's the consolidation going on in the industry. We just saw some of the biggest health insurance companies emerging. We're seeing companies like IBM and CVS going into partnership. So we're seeing a lot of consolidation of traditional healthcare players, and now some new entrants that are partnering up with traditional players, and to really offer additional capabilities in the whole patient management process. So how do we ensure that the communication of all that information gets across in the most efficient and cost-effective manner? That's what we're really looking at. Sienna has worked with many healthcare systems going back to, before around 2000, 2001, as well as individual hospitals, and helping them really figure out and deploy the next generation network technology. And as the technologies evolved into the packet and the optical technology, both on a private and a hybrid network basis, that's really the answer to that ever-increasing bandwidth needs, at the same time ensuring that you're staying within your overall CapEx and OpEx budgets. In addition to really, as I mentioned, focus on the security of the data in transit issue, Sienna is now also offering a low-cost network add-on device that will encrypt the data at the network level, to ensure that data in transit encryption that meets the NIST guidelines, that are referenced in the Health and Human Services Office of Civil Rights Act for HIPAA and high-tech compliance, to avoid or potentially avoiding having to report a data breach. If you look at the guidelines, they say that if that data in transit is encrypted with at least 112 key encryption, in the event of a data breach, you won't have to report that to OCR, and at the same time, you'll probably avoid a penalty. So that's what Sienna's really been working on over the last couple of years, specifically for the healthcare industry.
Wow. Well, it certainly is important and a very critical issue that I'm quite impressed with what we've seen so far through the Council with Sienna. Now, let's talk a little bit about the interesting development in the trend towards medical cities.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So the whole concept of medical cities, where regional community-based health centers are replacing the small private hospitals, it's really based on the theory that a cluster of related healthcare facilities, all in proximity to one another, will accelerate innovation. Now, these medical city hubs really serve as destinations for healthcare providers, research, medical education, as well as serve from an economic development perspective for the local community in terms of job creation, tax base, etc. These medical cities, they must be built on a scalable, carrier-grade network infrastructure. The broadband that I talked about, that's that key enabler. Because without it, a medical city concept can't survive unless you can connect all those different players in that ecosystem with the broadband capabilities. The whole concept sort of falls apart. There's been a lot of studies done. The Healthcare Facility Telecommunications Infrastructure Standard that really says that the ability to support high bandwidth requirements and growth projections that we're talking about in healthcare data that exceed 10 gigabit per second are essential, and it's really key. It's probably 10 gigabits is really minimum for a medical city, but it's also impossible using most legacy technologies, and that's why Sienna is really focused on helping these medical cities design and deploy a single converged transport infrastructure based on packet optical technology. Because with that, a medical city with these different healthcare organizations, they can support a wide variety of services, protocols, networking needs, and the all-important security issues. Now we're seeing more and more regional healthcare enterprises moving to a private and a hybrid packet optical network to address the need for this dramatic and continued increases in bandwidth demands and the requirement for greater network security that we talked about, and the desire to adapt quickly to this whole digital healthcare initiative that I just talked about. Now, a lot of them, are looking to build optical networks to connect campuses, and when I say a campus, that can be, a small 1-acre campus. I've seen others that are, 10, 20-acre campuses, or a full metro facility. And I know that there's some that have been built up in Chicago and I think Kansas City and some others. And they're seeking not only direct connection to each other, but also to data centers, whether private or public, and regional health information exchanges to support the local telehealth initiatives, the clinical decision support services, and the all-important data backup capabilities that are required, and they're also part of the HIPAA compliance. Now, a lot of CIOs will think, hey, you know what, they're constructing and managing a private network. Yeah, hey, that's way out of my league, too costly, too cumbersome, can't do it. But in all actuality, a private network doesn't have to be overly complex. Optical transmission and packet technologies, they're pretty mature, and they really offer the ability to meet the healthcare sector regulatory requirements for security, the protection of personal information, and ensure the rapid transmission and transport of all that data from those bandwidth-intensive applications that we talked about. Now, Sienna helps customers minimize that risk of a transition to a private optical network from their current lit services from carriers. We also help you support, operate, and maintain that network once it's running, whether you want to do it in-house or provide it as a managed service. So again, this lot of medical cities, a lot of large healthcare systems are looking at these private or hybrid networks to help, again, ensure that they meet the bandwidth needs for today with that scalability for the future, because they know that the data demands are just going to continue to increase. And what we've seen is with a number of these private networks, the payback period can be as short as 13 months. So once you made that capital investment, the savings that you realize over what you would have been paying to a lit service provider really can make that an attractive ROI proposition and a pretty easy business case.
Excellent. Well, it's been really wonderful working with Sienna, and you've been a great collaborator with our Health Tech Council. What are some ideas and vision for, working toward in the future with the council?
Well, we really see Health Tech as a forum which enables us to have an ongoing dialogue with health IT professionals across the country. Now at Sienna, I conduct research, I speak with analysts, I attend conferences. What I'm really looking for is a forum to have an ongoing dialogue with health IT professionals across the country. And, we're all on LinkedIn, we all say that we'll stay in touch, and we all get busy in our lives. And what's really lacking is this ability to have an ongoing dialogue. And again, Sienna is a vendor, but what we're really trying to do is understand what the CIO organizations in these healthcare industries are really going through. And we really want to try to be a partner in the evolution of this industry so that everyone wins. As I said at the beginning, the industry is changing at the speed of light. And I'd like to have the ability to bounce ideas around, solicit input into technologies that we're thinking about. For example, I mentioned the network level encryption capabilities that we developed. We know that we got to always keep innovating. I'd love to have the ability to balance ideas on the next generation of encryption off of different healthcare IT professionals across the country. And I like to be able to do it like in real time, not having to wait till we get together, and you guys put together some great conferences. But I like to have that ability to reach out and bounce these ideas off of people and solicit their input between the conferences. And that could be, via the your LinkedIn site or any other online forum. I'd really like to see more sharing of ideas and experiences. And again, no one's trying to push a hard sell onto anyone. We're really just trying to understand what's going on.
Sure. Well, you do a good job of that, and it's a great call to action for any of the listeners who are really interested in partnering and collaborating. And one of the things I often hear with working with the council is that they really do want to explain and educate industry technology providers on what their challenges are, what do they really need, what keeps them up at night. So I'm really excited to keep that collaboration and dialogue going between you and the council, and I think we'll see some really great things to come. Now, what would you say are some of the more pressing topics that need to be addressed as the industry moves forward?
Again, I think we kind of mentioned the whole digitization and the security, the privacy. And again, I say if the more you can help spur dialogue between the various stakeholders, and you've got a huge swath, variety of professionals across the health IT industry, the more you can spur dialogue between us, the more value your organization will add. And if we can just enable that dialogue, encourage that sharing, help nurture the relationships without having to wait for the official conferences, that will help move the industry forward.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed learning about you, your background, and Sienna's expertise. And to learn more about Sienna, go to CIENA.com. And for more information on health tech and the upcoming Council Summit, November 15th through 17th at the Homestead Resort in Virginia, go to htrac.org. Thank you so much again, Daniele, and I really look forward to working with you as we move forward.
Thanks, Kelly. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again for tuning in. Please join us for our next council meeting and upcoming podcasts. Go to htrac.org Again, I'm your host, Kelly Yoakum, and I look forward to your topic ideas, feedback, and suggested podcast participants. So please feel free to reach out to me at kellY@htrack.org.